Hey, everybody. This episode of Our Kids Play Hockey is brought to you by our title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena. Look, we all want our kids to succeed in hockey, but let's face it, finding training that's both effective and enjoyable can be a real challenge, and not to mention expensive and a total drain on time, especially if you have to drive to the rink, pay a private instructor. There's so many reasons that money gets spent on this game. But that's where NHL Sense Arena steps in. It's a virtual reality training game that brings the rink into your home that takes off-ice training to a new reality. It's designed to improve hockey sense and IQ, something that's lacking majorly in the game today for both players and goalies. And you get unlimited access to over 100 drills and training plans from top coaches and players that can be played anytime, anywhere, with drills approved by USA Hockey player and goalie development directors. Look, improving mental hockey skills at home has really never been more fun, and any hockey player that uses this is going to have a blast. All right. I've used this before on my own, and it feels like you're so immersed in an arena, you sometimes forget you have a headset on. And again, it's not being on the ice, but it allows you to work on some of these skill sets like scanning, as I said before, hockey IQ, looking around the rink, making the right plays, that getting those repetitions in now as a hockey player are super important for your development. So NHL Sense Arena is giving all the listeners an exclusive offer for $50 off an annual plan when you use our code Hockey Never Stops at checkout. Again, that's Hockey Never Stops. All you got to do is go to hockey.sensearena.com. Again, that's hockey.sensearena.com. Use the code Hockey Never Stops, and you'll save $50 on your annual plan of NHL Sense Arena. Make sure to check that out and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Well, we've got a real treat. Well, I should say I've got a real treat tonight. We're interviewing John Boruk. So he was a sportscaster in Philadelphia for many years. Don't worry, we don't just talk about Philadelphia sports the whole episode, because his son is a high-level hockey player in the area, and he has created a show called Raising a Champion, which really dives into a lot of the same subject matter we do on Our Kids Play Hockey. It's a great crossover episode. And we discuss a lot of different things, from obviously how he got into hockey, but a lot of the parenting side of hockey and how it applies to our own children, and the things he's learned in being a sportscaster and being around a lot of NHL players throughout his career, and how he applies that to being really a great father and a great leader in the market today. All right, before we jump into it with John, I just want to remind you guys, our children's book, When Hockey Stops, is still available at whenhockeystops.com. The whole purpose of this book is to teach your kids how to deal with adversity, which is something we talk about on the show today. The book dives into a young character who is facing a situation where he can't play for the year, and he still stays involved in the game even though he's injured. It's got a ton of great rave reviews. We are really proud of it, and we're really fortunate that a lot of people love it as much as we do. So check that out, whenhockeystops.com, or if you're inclined, go over to Amazon. It's on there too, and check it out. But without further ado, let's dive into this episode with John Boruk on Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias with Mike Benelli. Christy Cascio Burns is literally on assignment tonight. Our guest today, John Boruk, has 11 regional Emmy Awards that he's earned over 25 years of sports broadcasting, covering some of the world's biggest athletes on the game's biggest stage. He is the host of the Raising a Champion podcast, which we highly recommend to all of you, which dives into the industry of youth sports through the eyes of former professional athletes, parents, coaches, administrators, and medical experts to answer how youth sports can improve, be safer, cost-effective, and more inclusive for all athletes. Sounds very familiar, which is one of the reasons we're very excited to have him tonight. However, with all of those accolades, he will tell you that his greatest and proudest accomplishment has been raising 3 children who have all been very active through sports, including youth hockey, in their everyday lives. We're looking forward to diving into this one. John, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Hey, it's good to be here. And it's great to see a podcast dedicated to kind of what I talk about. I mean, I encompass all sports, but you guys are hockey centric. So that's really cool. And I'm right in the thick of it because I got a 2011 who's getting ready to start his Pee Wee major season. So it's fun. And I'm sure that you guys, between guests, you have a lot of really good information out there for parents and coaches and everybody.
Yeah, I'd say if there was a target, and like the center of the target was the target audience, your son's at that exact point, which means that you're there as a parent as well. But
Yeah.
no, we appreciate the compliment, obviously. And again, you're doing great work on your show as well. I'm going to say it again to the audience. If you like our show, you will love his show as well. So make sure you check that out. But I wanted to start with this. John, I was going to tell you this. So typically when I do my rundowns for shows and my research, I have so many questions. We never get to all of them. But for you,
Yeah.
I kind of know where we're going tonight. So I actually don't have a ton of questions because I'm pretty sure we're going to have
Okay.
good discussions
All
on
right.
all of
Good.
it. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. So again, I've watched you interview people for years, so thank
Yeah.
you for allowing us to flip the script a bit. But I actually wanted to start with if you could just tell us a little bit about the role that hockey has played in your life, and again a little bit more about your son who's playing,
Yeah.
how you've gotten there.
Yeah. It's well, it goes back to, I remember, I would say I grew up in the Dallas Fort Worth, Texas area back in the 1980s. And believe it or not, I actually had this affinity for hockey. I didn't know what it was, but I thought it was so cool. There was nowhere to watch it. This is pre-cable. Uh, I think maybe when the Stanley Cup was on back in that day is the only time that you could watch hockey. And there was no youth programs. The only place that you could even skate was to go to a mall that had like, an ice sheet there in the middle of the mall. So when I got into sportscasting, one of the big allures as I was moving through the ranks from one city to the next was in 1998, I took a job in Nashville, the year that the Nashville Predators were awarded an expansion team. So I got there and they started playing 7, 8 months later. So that was really my time to cover the sport, be around the sport, be around the players, get to know the ins, the outs, how they go about it, they train and everything. And then from Nashville, I moved after 5 years to Detroit. And during that time was probably the greatest collection of talent you'll ever see assembled on one team. That Red Wings team prior to the whole lockout and salary cap era, when they had Robitaille, Hall, Hasek, Chelios, Yzerman, Zetterberg, Datsuk.
Yeah, this isn't an all-star team you're naming, by the way. This is just the
No,
Detroit Red Wings of that time.
One team. Yeah, that won the Stanley Cup in 2002, and I got there, the year after that, but the team was still assembled. So it was, yeah, and I just had a passion for the sport. Just passion for covering. Love the players. If you've ever been around NHL players, you just know that they're a different breed. They're so down to earth, and a lot of that is because the way that you have to play the sport, your upbringing, and the way that you go about it is that you can't be a me-centric type person. You got to check your ego anytime that you step inside a rink, because the game will expose you. Expose those players who try to play that way. So being around locker rooms and that, and then moving on to Philadelphia. And being able to cover the Flyers for 13 years was really cool. And then, as when I got here, my two boys were born here. My oldest son, he got on a pair of ice skates, and I kind of wanted to push him in that direction, but he didn't really have an interest, and that was fine. The one thing that I told myself, when it came to developing, my kids and whatever they wanted to do is, well, first off, they have to have a passion. Like, I don't never want to have to talk them into doing something. They're the ones that have to, to show that they have a real genuine interest in doing something. So he didn't have it. And then my youngest son, who was born in 2011, I said, I'm going to get him out there at the age of, like, I think I had him on skates at the age of 3 or 4. And I remember I was holding up under his arms, and, I was out there for maybe 2-3 different sessions. And I said, if this kid doesn't get, I'm done. I can't, my arm's going to fall off if he doesn't just start skating. And about that time, he just started taking off. And that's how it starts, right? You get them out there at the age of 3, and then they're able to stay on their legs. And he's out there. I got, still have video on my phone. He's out there chasing the puck with kids, 2 and 3 years older than him. And that's how it all got started. I bought little hockey jerseys for him. And so he had like a Lundqvist jersey, a Giroux jersey, a Tyler Seguin jersey back in the day. You just get out there and just skate. So, it's sort of a bittersweet thing in terms of leaving NBC Sports Philadelphia when I did, because had I stayed on there and continued to cover the team, cover the Flyers, there's a lot of sacrifices that have to be made. And so now I'm grateful that I get a chance to be there every weekend, go to tournaments. He's got tournaments in Toronto and Detroit, Rochester. I think we're going to Pittsburgh. It's crazy. It's crazy. When you, where all we're going now. But it's great. It's you build such a camaraderie with parents, and I really believe that the parents probably the wins and losses mean more to the parents than the kids. They just like to get out there and they're competitive and have fun, but it's good. And I and with him and his love for hockey, we'll sit here and watch hockey on television. How he can pick things up as an analyst, playing the game, which is so cool. So it's really good. I'm glad that I have him to do that, because it's really kept me involved in hockey after leaving NBC Sports.
Well, and I want to add too, real quick, just so we don't leave them out. Your other kids play sports too, right? You had mentioned that in the pre-show.
Yeah, yeah. So my oldest daughter is she's still doing karate. She's second degree black belt. She's inching her way towards being a third degree black belt. My oldest son got his black belt as well. He kind of did that because they're very close in age, my daughter and my oldest son. And then he just wanted to focus and concentrate on basketball. He tried football 1 year or a couple of years, but he just wanted to focus primarily on basketball, and that's essentially what he's been doing for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And he's going to be a junior in high school, and he's going to play on the varsity basketball team.
So success in sports. Now, here's a cool question that just popped in my head. We get a lot of emails on this show. We get a lot of feedback just about the anxiety of being a parent, right? And we all feel that in different ways. So here's my question. You've been around the NHL athlete, some of the best, right? In multiple markets. Do you feel that experience of being around those athletes has influenced the way that you view the youth game? Right. Because again, John, we hear it all the time. Parents talk about the ROI of youth hockey, and if they can just make college or they can just make the show. And I think that we talk about the insanity of that conversation, at any point really in the youth game outside maybe the U18 level is when that's really you even can consider that. Right. So did your experience on the air and being a sports journalist impact the way you approach the game as a parent?
That's a really good question. And I would say for the most part, no. Until I transitioned more from just doing pre and post game shows into following the team and covering them on the road, writing for the website. I did that for the last 2 years I was there, and they would have a dad's trip, and so I would really, because I had kids of my own at the time, I really took the time to get to know some of the dads, like Claude Giroux's dad, Ray. And I would ask the dads, tell me about what you did. Tell me, because I was like a sponge at that point. I just wanted to absorb all the information, everything that they did, along the way. And the one constant I think is they just said, no, I didn't, push them. It's one of those things that they have to drive the train. You can put the coal in the engine for them. You can supply it, but they're the ones that have to drive. They're the ones that have to be the driving force. If you got to be behind them and pushing them, it's not going to work. And none of them were what I would consider these overzealous parents, these crazy, parents. Now, a lot of them were like with Travis Konechny. His dad was his coach for, I think, until he got to be 15 or 16 in juniors. So he was a coach. So you'd see that, but certainly not Claude Giroux's dad. Claude Giroux's dad was an electrician. And he just knows that, they lived way up in Hearst, Ontario, where they had a lot of cold winters. And, Claude would leave the house and go out and play for 3 or 4 hours, because you could do that, and that's why, a lot of Canadians have such an advantage, because they have those colder winters where, it's kind of like having inner city basketball courts all over the
Right.
place. You know, that's they just have frozen ponds because the weather gets that cold. But that's when I really started to pick up a lot of things, is talking to some of these dads, talking to some of the moms when they would come into town. You know, I did a big story. In fact, I got them to come on the podcast, but before that, Johnny Gaudreau, and I would say that probably Guy Gaudreau is probably more in line with those hardcore parents, but he was a coach. He was a skating coach. He ran the organization, ran the outfit there at Hollydale. And so that was his job. And Johnny just became, but I don't think I don't think Guy Gaudreau said, Johnny, you got to be here, be here, be here. Johnny just developed into being a rat ring, and that he just never wanted to leave. It's like, boom, if dad's going to be there, then I want to be there. And that's the way it's going to be. So, but that was what was really cool. There was a really good story, like talking to Brian Elliott's dad was, Brian Elliott was a skater and he was a position player as a squirt. And then when he got to Pee Wee at about this age, he's like, "Hey, Dad, I don't want to ever come off the ice." And he's like, "Well, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you." He goes, "Well, then I want to be a goalie." So at the age of 12, Brian Elliott decides that he just doesn't want to skate anymore. He doesn't want to be a position player. He wants to be a goalie.
Right.
And so you think at the age of 12, you're starting that. It seems kind of late, but that's what happened. And so, I think that if you have talent and 90% of it is just raw DNA talent. If you've got the raw DNA talent, it's the other 10, 15% that how much can you push yourself? Right. How much are you willing to work when others don't want to work? How just all the stuff off the ice, conditioning and all of that. But I really believe that, if you want, you don't want to say this to parents because everybody's got this lofty goal, right? Hey, my kid's he's gonna be there. He's great at the age of 6, yeah. And that sort of thing. And it's so. I'm telling you, the funnel. I talk about the funnel. I mean, the funnel's here, and then even when you get to college, it's like down to here, and then the NHL is just so tiny. But it's so much goes into it, like so much. I actually want to do an episode. And I haven't gotten this yet, but I got to find the right person. Because when you get to be 15, 16, 17, and 18 is when you start thinking about relationships. You start thinking about, dating girls and dating right. This. And it's easy for that to kind of, if you have that goal of wanting to play collegiate hockey or you want to play junior hockey and have NHL aspirations, you got to really have tunnel vision, and it's easy to get sidetracked, and like Johnny Gaudreau, when I talked to his parents, you had to skip, the junior dance, the sophomore dance, the senior prom, those things. It's not an option. Like it's right. Just not, if you want to continue to ascend to the point to where you want to, you have to make sacrifices along the way. So, that's when I think I really started to absorb a lot of information, when I started to talk to a lot of the parents, started the dads and some of the moms of the Flyers and stuff.
Well, I'll tell you that I have an immense passion for the game, and I realized early on, and again, Mike and I always joke that this podcast is therapy for all of us, but as much passion as I have for the game, can't put that into my child, right? They have to develop it, right? Yep. And it doesn't matter. And that's a common theme I see amongst parents. And I'm actually really thankful that you shared that, John, because I think it shows you, especially when we get to the elite level, it's never exactly what I think people think it is, right? And I'll tell you, we've interviewed NHL parents and NHL players. And I think for the most part, across the board, like you said, 99.5% of people in the NHL that play in the NHL have that passion. Right. There are a few that just like, as you said, they have the raw talent, but they don't tend to last as long as people think. Right. I remember a long time ago in the 90s. I remember in the 90s, Wayne Gretzky was still in New York, or he had probably just arrived in New York. And he was on like a public access radio show. And some parent called in. Like, I don't even know if I've told you this one. And they said, "Listen, Wayne, my kid, can you tell my kid to practice? Can you tell my kid to practice harder?" And this was a really impactful moment for me as a young person. Listen, he goes, no, I cannot tell your kid to practice. Yeah. Hey, I don't want it. right? And thinking, here's the greatest hockey player ever, right? Saying that, if you don't want it, it's not doesn't matter. The rest almost doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had a similar talk like that with my son, where they have like a 3/5 rink as opposed to the NHL rink, and he likes to be on the 3/5 rink, of course, because there's not as much surface space, so you don't have to worry about skating up and down and up and down. It's you're playing the short game and battling, and he loves all of that stuff. But he's like, oh, he goes, what rink are we on? So when I tell him, oh yeah, you're on the NHL rink tonight, he's like, oh god, And so I'm like, look. You got to. I said you got to find a way to get something out of practice. If you want to get where you want to go, practice is where it's going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to be in games. You're not going to. You don't do the necessary skill work playing in games. It's doing it in practice and paying attention and focusing and embracing that. The really great players embrace practice, not just playing the games. The games is like, once they get into the games, they're already locked in the mentality, but they learn how to get stuff in practice. That's why I love to read Kobe Bryant a lot, because Kobe was, one of the best, and Jordan, those guys talked about maximizing their practice time and how
you make practice hard so the games are easy.
Yeah. But you mentioned something too about like the kids and instilling passion. I ask him every single year, and we had a hard lesson this year because he was cut from the team that he played for last year. One of the big teams folded. So you had a disbursement of about 13, 14 kids looking for a home, looking for a new team. And he happened to just sort of be one of the odd ones out, even though I thought he had a really good year. It happens. And I said, I gave him some options, but I asked him every single year, I said, do you want to play AAA hockey? Because this isn't cheap. I mean, between tuition and equipment and being on your third team now in 3 years, I'm buying jerseys every single year. You're talking, a hockey season's $10,000 to $15,000, and that's not cheap. So if you want to do, I need to know that you want to do this, that that you're willing to go to every practice and every game, and you have an enjoyment, not just that you want to do it, but you enjoy doing it. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, then all of this is pointless. You can play AA hockey and have fun, and we can save a whole lot of money and not have to travel, all across the Northeast. So that's the key. I think if there's a parent out there, when you're in that summertime, get away from hockey, go do vacations, let them play, let them do something, go, you take trips to the beach, the shore, whatever, but just get away. You don't need to, so that their batteries are charged, but then make sure that they really, before you embark, and usually you got to make that decision back in March, that, that they definitely want to stick with AAA, because as you start to move up, it starts to get a little rougher. We're now 1 year away from checking. That's a whole different beast that a lot of kids aren't going to be really acclimated to, and then after that, you're about 2 years away from these guys hitting puberty. And when that happens, bodies change, a lot changes. And some of the kids that may be on top now, it's going to be flipped. It's going to be completely different. You're going to see something. You're going to see kids that you never thought were good all of a sudden grow into their bodies, and now the sport's completely changed for them. So that's what I just want to make sure that this is still what he wants, because I don't say that my dream is your dream. It's your dream is my dream. But if this isn't your passion anymore, then it's certainly not going to be my passion.
Right.
Yeah, I think that comes up too all the time. We talk about, like we even mentioned a little earlier, and you used the term like ROI, right? And I think we've all lost sight. And listening to you and on your, on the other, and your real life, right, in your podcast world and your discussion with all athletes and athletic parents, is that this ROI somehow turned into pro hockey or a pro sport, as opposed to building a better human being. And the ROI is that, for 98% of the young men and women that go through sport at even the highest levels, right, end up being our leaders. We want them to be the ones that have the grit, that had the adversity, that can deal with change, that can deal with conflict, can deal with, a team, working within a team setting, whether you're a plumber or a stockbroker, that you see like this somewhere along the line, the ROI turned into like a paid position to play the sport, as opposed to all of the things that we got our kids into sports for in the first place. And, you know, obviously social media has played a huge part in that, and this professionalization of youth sports. But to your point, John, when you can evaluate with your children and say, okay, where are we at? Is this something you love doing? And never really talking about, well, do you love doing it because you ultimately want to, you know, be Tyler Sagan? And like, you know, we were up in a hockey camp in Toronto, and you know, there's a brand new Maserati outside, and you know, it's 6:30 in the morning, and you see, you know, Tyler Sagan walks out. He just got done with his workout. He gets in the car, and all the kids are like, "Oh my God, that was Tyler Sagan!" And look at the car he has, and look at the life he has. There's a guy behind him carrying like 15 sticks. I said, "Yeah, but he's here at 5:30 in the morning, and he's doing the work. Like he's still a dedicated. You know, people don't see all that. They don't see all that. Like they don't see the practice. They don't see the fact that the games are the funnest part because it's actually less work. You know, you're like, right. Now we can just have some fun here. But I think that, but somewhere along the line, maybe you could talk about that a little bit because you're dealing with all sports, right, John?
Yeah.
Is that where do you think that disconnect really has become from, hey, I want my kids playing sport because I want them to learn all the lessons that sport's supposed to be teaching, as opposed to, oh no, my kid's going to play a sport, so he doesn't have to go to have a real job.
Well, first off, there shouldn't even be a mentality of having an ROI. Like
right.
you shouldn't even be thinking about any return on whatever your investment is. Okay, the return is that you enjoy watching him play at whatever level he's playing at. That's the return. That's the way I look at it. I just said, hey, I love watching him play. It brings me great joy, however long it is. Maybe it's until 16, maybe it's 17 or 18 through high school. I don't know, but I really enjoy it. As long as he enjoys it and I enjoy it, I'll invest. And I'm not putting this money thinking that there's some big shiny object down the road, and if he doesn't get it, it's going to be a major disappointment. I don't look at that at all because, well, first off, you know, you can't. You don't. A lot of things change. Like I said, I'm just mentioning the whole. You know, these kids get, you know, they get girlfriends, and maybe then all of a sudden sports, you know, I'm not really into it all that much. You know, it's kind of yeah, I'd rather go out here and party with Johnny and some of the boys as they get older. You know, so that's different. But you asked, when did the mentality start to change? When things started to get more expensive. When families have now, when you started having elite clubs and elite teams and the cost of tuition, and then these coaches are getting paid, and you see how much you're having to pay, your expenses, and how much, you know, you look on your spreadsheets and you see, you know, how much money, the thousands of dollars. That's when they said, well, I better get something out of this. That's where the mentality started. Because back in my day when I was playing, everything was YMCA or Little League this, and you know, my parents were on a shoestring budget, and it was never like that. It was never like that at all. There was not all these hyper, you know, well, you got to be on this travel team, and well, I'm on 2 travel teams, and then I'm you know, and then it becomes a 12-month long ordeal. That was never ever the case. But it's everybody's trying to keep up with everybody else, and when somebody's paying, oh, we're going to go up here to play this tournament. I don't get caught up in it. It doesn't bother me one bit, but I see it happening all the time. And that's where it all started, is when the money started to flow in and it became big business, is when parents says, well, if I'm buying into this, I better be getting something out of it.
Right. And I think, and obviously the organization and the coaches and the teams, you know, feed into that, right? Because all of a sudden somebody said, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to be like my father volunteered for everything. Like he was doing the clock and getting the door and helping with water bottles. Like, whoa, I could have got paid for all that. Like I could actually turn this into a revenue stream for myself by starting this business and having a travel team that goes to Boston every weekend. So yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think that's where we actually, it's so funny because we just had this conversation the other day with another guest about the point of saying, like, what you did as a kid. Like, why did you forget that all the stuff that you did as a kid was because you loved going and doing it? And go, like, we talk to parents all the time. Does your son or daughter go out on their own and hit balls? Do they go on their own and shoot pucks? Do they get up in the morning and go,
Exactly.
and all of a sudden you're like, wait, where, you got to get in, back when I, grew up, and a lot of the best athletes I knew, you had to beg them to come inside. Like you had said, listen, that's it. If you don't come inside, I'm taking your stick away. Like you have to get in,
The
as
lights are
opposed
on.
to,
The lights are on outside.
I just paid 2 hours. You must go to this clinic. You got to go to like, it's that whole pendulum is shifted. And I'm not saying, and the sad reality is the kids that are doing that on their own are doing it on their own. They're and we don't see that. Everybody forgets that that's a self-motivated kid. I almost get really I don't know, I'm not jaded so much, but like I'll really question a parent, like, is your son really want to be here at 5:30 in the morning? I know
Yeah.
they're here, but is this something like you went out and the car was started and they had a cup of coffee for you? Like, is that really what's happening? Or are you driving this hoping that they get the bug? Like hoping that they
Well, are you living through them? Or,
There's
yeah,
one,
or do you feel you could pave that path easier for them so
right.
that they can get to a point where maybe they do love it?
it's funny. There's one example I can think of a dad who did that. Bob Stevenson, Bobby Ryan's father,
Mm.
got him up at 5:30 every morning to skate every morning as a little kid, and did it from like age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And and obviously Bobby Ryan was a really good player. Played in the NHL, second overall pick behind Sidney Crosby. But that was the one takeaway from the time that I spent with Bob Stevenson, was that he had him out there 5 o'clock in the morning having him skate, and apparently, I guess he liked it. He stayed with it, but his dad also had a presence about him to where there's no other option, and so yeah, I mean, how many parents would do something like that? I don't know, but to kind of go back to your point, when we were younger and kids, we didn't have the distractions that the kids have now. And I'm talking about phones and gaming consoles and all of that stuff, because going outside and playing sports, no matter what it was, sandlot football, wiffle ball, right? In somebody's backyard and fences, did that. Or you played pickup basketball in the driveway. That was the social setting. And today the social setting is put on the headphones and play Xbox, and play, Call of Duty or League of Legends or Fortnite or whatever the game is. But that's the social setting, and it's tearing away to where they're not going out there and just having that free expressive play, that unstructured play. So because they're doing that, and then you're trying to play catch up, then you're trying to structure things. And I do this because, in the summer, I want him to at least get out there, that I'm calling up, Elite Edge up in Malvern. I'm saying, hey, can I get him out there for an hour session on the ice? Because he needs to get his legs moving. So that's part of the problem. I don't think I'd be doing that if he was out here playing lacrosse with his buddies, or basketball, but they don't do that.
Right.
Well, and it's too hard, right? It's almost like, like this whole like when I became a parent, like this whole hey, we got a play date arranged. I go, a play date? What the hell is my parents would be like, what are you talking about? You had to go arrange to go have somebody go play with your kids? I go, yeah, because kids don't just, the cul-de-sacs are empty. The end of the streets are vacant. Like you don't see the kid, because it's harder. There's no doubt about it that the distractions and the ability to do something that's not physical, that doesn't take creativity, like they're doing that in a different way. And it's hard. It is hard for me. I'm the first one to say it's really hard for me to accept that this is our reality, and that, but at the same time, like, okay, well, instead of fighting it, maybe we can create something outside, like, and say, hey, like I find myself playing with my kids all the time, where my father never played with me, like never, because there was 17 other kids playing. Like you didn't have to play with your
hurt.
kid. And you get hurt, right? But it's like, I'm not playing street hockey with that guy. But I think it's so funny how when I ask kids just to go out and play, I'll like I do this all the time in my community. Like I'll just take a bunch of sticks and I'll go up and I'll send a little text message. Hey, I'm up at the tennis court. I got a bunch of floorball sticks up here. Anyone want to come?
Yeah.
And I do it with lacrosse too. We just have open night of lacrosse. Hey, it's a beautiful night. The sun's out. There's a bunch of balls up here. The nets are empty. And then, and you'll get parents being like, oh, thank God, because now somebody is helping me get my kid out.
Mike, you're literally doing can Johnny come out to play? In
That's what
modern, in modern times.
but I'm the voice. I'm the
But
voice.
that's the whole key, is that you're
Right.
the one that's spearheading this whole effort.
Right.
Nobody had to spearhead it back in the day.
Well,
You know, our imaginations ran wild. We knew what to do. We figured it out. We knew how to cultivate games and create games, and hey, buddy's driveway is the end zone and the other end zone's over here. You
right.
made it work. You made it happen.
I'm Randall
Now,
Cunningham.
yeah, right. Yeah.
It always ended
And
well when I pretended to be him, at least, right?
so,
But
you know, if you're a parent out there and you can keep your kid from having a cell phone and an Xbox until he's 13, you know, hats off. Good luck.
well,
That's the way to do it.
I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, and I'll preface it with that I actually agree with you guys, but there are a few things to keep in mind, and I'm speaking to our parents listening to this one. So number one is that, and this started well before this, but we have to remember too that all these kids just were told for 2 years straight, you can't go outside, you can't go play anything, you can't go to the rink. And again, no one's fault, no one asked for that, but you have a whole generation of kids who were locked up for a year and a half, and we even told them to go to school on their computer. Right. So again, that's not so much directed at what you guys were saying. It's just like, you know, that happened. And it's a little weird. We don't talk about it more in society. It's just we kind of moved on real quick from that, which I think is dangerous in itself. The other thing too, is I would make the argument, I'm sure you guys will agree. Kids are still as creative. I just think that the plane that they use that creativity has changed. And like, you know, John, you mentioned Fortnite. Like, it's an interesting game, and follow me here, right? Because you have to be really creative to be in that game.
You do. Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're right. You're sitting there with headphones on. I think another element of this is, and I'm actually being self-reflective as a parent. It is real easy as a parent when you're tired at 5 p.m. and they want to go on the Xbox to just be like, yeah, go do that so I can get some quiet. And I've tried to be real conscious to when I get home with my kid, like sometimes after practice, and my son and daughter will pick up the basketball, and we're very fortunate we have a basketball hoop outside our house. And my first thought really is, no, get inside, go shower.
We don't have time for this.
We don't have time for this. And Mike, I catch myself. I say, you know what? Go ahead. Because I want to encourage the behavior a bit. Right. But I'm saying too that I agree with you guys about that kids don't go out enough. I also think that as parents, we are also trained a bit to not help them go out as much. Right. And also here's another one, John, like and Mike, there was no, at least from my experience, there was no massive fear in the 80s and 90s of your kid just going out and coming back when the lights went back on. I think, you know, now it's like, you know, I don't leave my sight, don't go too far.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's this probably very rational fear, to be honest, because we just know more about the world. World's a twisted place. But I think it's a two-way street. And again, I don't think you guys were not saying that. I just think it's a two-way street.
Right. But there also was no fear growing up that you weren't going to make it, because you didn't even think about making it. There was no fear. There was no fear of being in a town going, I can't believe that Lee's dad has him going to that power skating clinic. What the hell?
Right.
Like, I've got to do that. I should be doing that. Like, and then the parents that say, oh, no, we're not doing anything. And all of a sudden you go to the power skating clinic and they're all there. And they go, oh, well, Mike, he just decided at the end. But I think it's just, but it's so funny how, you know, we've gotten to this point where, and John, you brought it up, like everybody's trying to keep up with what the other guys are doing. And then it just snowballs out of control. And I think we're at the point right now when we're talking about setting the standard of where I've got to get to, and missing the boat, and having an opportunity that we're in this world that we never, like, I played with some really, really good hockey players, and I don't remember ever there were a group of dads sitting behind the glass saying, like, oh my God, you know, have you started looking at this program for, you know, because those 4 kids are going there and I need these 3 kids to play with these 3 kids so they can get a scholarship somewhere. Like, it just, and to John, it's become, you know, obviously the money, but it's got now listen, there's no, I just saw an ad for a 2018 team, right? So 2018 select team, of, you know, so you think about 2011, you think's young, right? It was a 2018 team.
Did you say 2018?
2018 select program, right?
It's just insane.
They're 5.
They're 5 years old, and they're being selected and groomed, right, for the real team, which is the next year, which is the 6-year-old team. So it's the pre-selected.
I can't even fathom that.
Right, but the thing is, everyone, you hang that shingle up, and there'll be 75 kids at that tryout. And there'll be a lot of people at that invitational. I have this conversation with lacrosse. So I run our lacrosse program in town. And we have we literally have lacrosse people in this town that are ex-pro lacrosse players, Division I, top of the game, played at every single level, can do. They just look like they play lacrosse. Like, my God, that's actually what lacrosse is supposed to look like. Those guys are good. And they can't fathom the fact that they have to join a team that charges $4,000 to play on the team, and all they're getting is a field and balls. Like, that's it. The only difference in our program and that program is, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the uniforms and they get cool stickers on their helmet, but there's no other, like that's what's so odd about other sports to me. Like, you could get better at baseball by being alone. You could get better at lacrosse by being alone. You can get better at basketball. You can get great at basketball by being alone. And where hockey then becomes, it's harder and harder because of the way the sport's structured and the access to ice and the access to all this other stuff that comes to it. Like, you can't just play pickup hockey on your own. And I think this makes our mentality of the sport, good and bad, different. It's good and bad. I mean, it's the reason why people are so passionate about hockey. Like, I don't see myself on the sidelines at lacrosse games, at varsity games and stuff, where I see the same like passion. Like, maybe in prep school level, or the kids that are legitimately like kids that are on a different track, to play. But I kind of yearn for the day, yearn for the days of the kids going up to a park, the kids going out in the ice, the kids going to a basketball court and just playing. And we all talk about this, like, how do we get back to that unstructured, fun, do it on your own kind of play? And unfortunately, like, I even see it in the kids now. The kids separate themselves. Like, oh, where do you play? Oh, you play here? Oh, well, you can't play on my. I'm not. It's almost like it's like you can't play with us because you're just not. You didn't make that team.
And we've almost got to the point where I think the Philadelphia area's got a pretty good number of public skating facilities, right?
A lot.
Got a good number. But between boys ice hockey, girls ice hockey, which is exponentially growing, figure skating, and anything else, they make so much money off renting that by the hour that there's not really a good time to say, hey, pick up games after school 4 to 6. It's like it's all rented out. It's and that's what's unfortunate, is that it'd be kind of cool that if your neighborhood rink almost had a designated time after school that, hey, bring the boys down here and just play pickup games. Let them play pickup games.
So, John, here's a good example. So the stadium in Havertown, right? For those of you not nearby, it's just outside of Philadelphia. This is a municipal rink. It's one of the last remaining municipal rinks in the area. So for the audience, no, they don't really need to make any money. It's run by the township, right? The rink's been paid for years. They just instituted stick and puck times and open hockey times for kids. And I remember there was questions like, is anyone going to show up? And people show up. These kids show up, and it's all different levels, and they all play together. And it's kind of inspiring because, and again, this is a one ice sheet facility. This is actually a rink who probably really can't afford to do that.
Right.
Right. But you took and again, this is not a shot at anybody who runs a rink. It is a business. But when they took the kind of need to make money element out of it and introduced this, they're making money because these kids are coming in and they have to chase the kids down. And so that element of being a child is there, right? And I think we're uncovering that. It's just, how are we as really the adults in society going to get them to see that, hey, you can be creative, right? And it doesn't always have to be in hockey, and we're all agreeing on that, right? It just anything.
Well, I think that would be my question. I'd love to ask John is like, because you talk to so many different sport parents, and what's the anxiety level, or what in your discussions with these folks, like, is it possible for a parent just to go to a batting cage with a kid and not intervene? Is it possible for a parent to throw out 10 balls and a net up at the field and say, hey, go shoot, and not like be like, oh, because I know it's so hard for me. Like, I'm like, I could help you here. Let me help you. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Like, I know somebody that could help you with this.
I'm having flashbacks. Stop it.
It's so hard to, I loved and hated the parents that were able to drop their kid off at the rink and go for a run. Like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wait a minute. You just dropped your kid off and you're able to go work out? I said, that doesn't seem fair to me.
I drop them off.
Great.
I drop them off and go to the pub and have some beers.
Yeah, right. Well,
seriously.
Yeah. If you're gonna whatever it is, you're not over. You're not hanging over the glass.
No. Yeah, no, and I think that a lot, especially if I don't gather that they have that anxiety, and one of the things that I think is really important, especially after watching a game, because anxiety levels run way too high when it comes to games, is when a game is over, don't say anything. Just say good job. Just say good job. Pat them on the shoulder, on the back, on the butt. Just say, hey, you played a good game. Because here's the thing, that the message that I think really resonates. When you start to evaluate and you start to pick apart what they did and what they didn't, then they're going to start to resent the fact that, oh, geez, when the game is over, dad's he's going to do this. They just want to go and play. Right. And if they're not doing something well, their coach will say something, or somebody, or something. Let the coach do that.
Right.
You don't have.
And they know, right? And they know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The coaches know. Or they'll see something, but you're so hyper focused on your kid that if he takes a shift off, then you're on it. You're like, yeah, but at the end of the second period, it just wasn't there for you.
Here's my notes.
You got like notes. And look, I get it and all, but you're not out there, man. This is your kid's time, and you don't know what it's like. And maybe he's got a cramp that he's not explaining, or maybe he didn't get enough to eat before the game and he's running on low on energy, or you didn't get him to bed. Who knows? It could be a combination of all of those things. All I'm saying is that you got to take a step back and remember that you're there for the enjoyment of watching your child play the game. And, look, if he wants something, if he asks for it, then yeah, absolutely. Give it.
Yeah.
Give it, say, yeah, this is what I thought. But I don't think it should be one of those things and be like, get in the car and stick. And I'm not, because I've seen that too. Where parents are just like, they're throwing their kids' equipment in the car because they just got blasted 6-1. Their son didn't do anything, this, that, and the other. Doesn't matter, man. No one's going to remember the game. Nobody does. They just don't. It's what? Let the kid process it. Let them they don't need you to compound all of their anxiety of having, because they've already heard it from the coaches, their teammates. They talk on the bench. They talk on the bench. Everybody knows, what a bad performance a 6-1 loss is. It doesn't need to be further escalated when you get in the car.
No, if anything, John, you need to be the safe place for your kid after a game. You need to be the comfort place. I was very fortunate to have two great parents. It's like I was always safe at home, and I knew that, and it was a gift. As I got older, I realized how much it is, because not every kid on my team felt that way. Some of them, it was a nightmare when the game ended. The other thing too, just speak of this, one of the most popular episodes we've ever done, it's in the top 5, was titled "The Car Ride is Not for Coaching." Right.
Yeah.
and I've done this little experiment with my own son, who's 9. And it's funny when you dive into this. I purposely, right, and not purposely, I don't talk about the game usually after the game unless he asks, like you said. And I said to myself, I'm going to just do a few car rides and just let me see the first thing he brings up. Right. Like because it's usually a little quiet after the game, good or bad. Sometimes a little more rambunctious, but I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's a video game or something that has nothing to do with hockey. And I've actually gotten to myself to a place where that's kind of a relief, because you just said I might be holding on to something that my son's a goalie. So I might be holding on to something that I really want to talk to him about. Right. It's never negative at this age, but I'm like, oh man, I really want to talk to him about his posting up and making a good seal. And he's like, hey, so yeah, Dad, I saw this Fortnite thing coming out. And it's like a reminder to me, like, yo, Lee, shut up. Like he's got to enjoy the time. Like it's almost admirable how quickly he can move past it. Right. And we can't as fathers and mothers.
The kids within 30 minutes, like as I said, they're back on Snapchat, and
it's amazing.
It's an outer space at that point, but more to the point, what I will bring up in the car is the positive. I'll sit there and say, man, I love that pass. I know you guys didn't score, but that's that's really good vision, and to think, to be selfless, or the back check that may have saved a potential goal. Little things like that, I think, are worthy of bringing up, just so that they know you're paying attention,
Right.
and you're reinforcing the little things that they should be doing all the time. Because look, when you're 9, 10, 11, 12, it's the kid who scored, oh, John, no, it was Frankie who scored 4 goals, and oh, he tried the Michigan. I mean, like, I can't tell you how many kids I see
Yeah.
tried the Michigan. But the game of hockey is won or lost by doing the little things that nobody talks about. So be the parent to talk about.
Right.
Talk about the little things that nobody else wants to talk about, because those are the things that win hockey games. Those are the things that are going to get your kid to playing junior hockey, when they're at the age of 16, potentially college hockey. And then, who knows beyond that? Because look, everybody wants to be Alex Ovechkin. Everybody wants to be the great goal scorer. Everybody wants to do, who's the kid with, plays for the Anaheim Ducks, Zegras,
Yeah.
Travis Zegras, all the great fancy moves. That's great. But guess what? For every one of those, there's 7 or 8 guys who are just the bust your butt,
Yeah.
hard workers, back check, do the little things that have to be done. That's how they got to where they are, is by doing all of those things that nobody talks about.
Yeah, well, and I would make the argument too that we talk about all the time about that 0.0001% of guys, the Ovechkins, the Crosbys, the McDavids, and they put that work in too. So however you slice it,
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, again, look, there's nothing wrong with being a 4th line grinder in the NHL. You're still one of the greatest hockey players that's ever lived. If you even So listen, I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. I did want to talk about your podcast, because I've been listening to it. I think you're doing a great job. Again, it's called Raising a Champion. For those of you listening, pause right now, go subscribe to that real quick. Make sure you come back though. Don't just leave.
Yeah. Oh,
come
yeah.
back. All right. And I wanted to ask you, what spawned that? And I'm going to kind of combine it with this too, because you've had some amazing guests on that show. I wanted to know, are there any congruencies that you see amongst the guests that's like, wow, okay, everyone kind of agrees with this thought? Or is there like a moment on the show that you had that was just a light bulb or between the eyes moment that you're like, wow, I really need to share this message?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's good. I mean, I try to hit on so many different aspects. Field hockey's popular up here. Lacrosse obviously is big here in the Mid-Atlantic area. I haven't done as much just football or baseball.
You gotta go back to Texas for that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've also tried to get into areas like nutrition. I had a nutritionist who actually wrote a book specific to kids sports, nutrition for kids. What do they need? How do they fuel their bodies? Right? Because if you're on the road at a tournament, everybody can relate. We're going to Chick-fil-A. We're going to pick up McDonald's. We're going to pick up Chick-fil-A. What can we do? Because I've watched so many documentaries that you put that stuff that's got so much saturated fat and oil in there that slows down performance. I mean, I know when my son we're playing a double header, they're playing a game at 11 or 10 and another one at 3, and they've got that gap where they're going to eat lunch. I know exactly how they're going to play at 3 and 4. I've seen it every single time. What can you do in that gap to where you can sort of refuel them and recharge them? Because I think that nutrition is almost as big of a deal as as getting on the ice and shooting pucks and all that. It's all part of it. It's like you divide the pie of what are the important elements of creating a great athlete. That's a big one too. And I've been talking to people, talking to more people like that. And it's not just drinking water; it's making sure that you're putting more sodium, because you're sweating out sodium. You need to replenish your body with sodium. So, no, yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of guests. There's been some little tidbits along the way. The Goudreau's is really good because we all know Johnny Gaudreau. I thought early on I was able to get Brian Boucher, who I worked with, and Brian coached. I remember going out and watching his son, Tyler, when he was 13, never thinking that he was going to be, a top 10, top 15 NHL pick like he was. But seeing, and Brian wasn't that way as a coach. Brian just kind of put his hands behind and just sort of watched him. And then, when there was a stoppage in play, then he would kind of coach him. But he wasn't real loud, boisterous type of coach. So it's always good to hear. And then more than anything, the one thing that stood out about Brian Boucher when I had him on talking about his son is that I think it was either a fractured wrist or maybe it was a collarbone. That's what it was. He fractured his collarbone, and he was kind of like being the big tough dad. You just got to play through it. He's like, yeah, it's really sore. I know. You just got to grind it. And he kind of felt, it was the one moment time where he felt like that. He was like, oh, geez, now I feel like a really bad dad because here I am. I'm telling him to grind it out, and the kid's got a legit injury. He's broken collarbone. So, there's a lot of little things like that. Karen Corbett, the Penn lacrosse coach, and it really became the central focus of that episode, where she just says, you don't see very many leaders anymore. Kids that know how to lead. Right. How do you develop leaders? How do you instill, those values and those leadership abilities in a kid that's 16, 17, 18, 19 years old? That's something else that I'd like to explore. And she talked a little bit in that episode when I had her on.
It's funny you bring that subject up too, because we talk about how there's a lot more information now about bullying and about kind of pressure, but there's a part of the conversation I think gets lost is the ability to push someone else in the right way, right? Yeah. And as part of leadership, the one that comes to my mind right now is just Nate McKinnon. After they won the cup a couple years ago, there was a lot of just gotcha journalism of like, well, he is so mean to his teammates and he's so rude to his teammates, and it kept going, and finally his teammates came out. And, the Avalanche, like, yo, shut up. Like, we need that. We need the guy that's going to push us. We need the guy that's going to yell at us when we don't finish the drill. Look, you mentioned it. All the greats, Jordan, Bryant, they demanded that from their teammates.
Yeah.
Right. So there's part of the leadership there that I think that I'm not saying we've gone soft, but we have to shed light on that too, that it's okay to push a teammate the right way. Right. It's okay to be pushed too.
It's here, ask this. It's kind of a dual two-part question. Do you want to be a leader? Or do you want to be a friend? If you want to be a friend, more than often, you're not going to be a leader, because a leader is going to ask you to do something that you probably don't, that may be unpopular. I mean, they're not always the popular person in the room, but they're determined. They see things and they're demanding of things. And, friends are going to sit there, and if you're complaining about this or complaining that, they're just going to chirp on with you. They're going to kind of pile on. You're like, oh yeah, this sucks, that sort of thing. Leaders don't see it. They see it in a whole different reflection, and so they're not always going to take the popular opinion. They're going to find a way to present it differently. So it's really cultivating a different mindset than what a lot of these kids are. And one thing that I do want to add, parents, it's very easy at hockey games, youth hockey games. The second that, one team gets called for 3 penalties, you start chirping the refs. I mean, you'll see it every single game. So one thing that I think you have to be really cognizant about is that the kids on the bench hear you're chirping, you're here complaining about the referee. So then they're going to think it's okay, that if they lose 4-2 or 5-3, well, the reason we lost is because of the refs. You guys were complaining about the refs the whole time. So now it becomes the nice, easy excuse. And you don't ever want to make that the excuse, because there's no lesson to be learned in that. Now you can easily defer away from your own mistakes, and you don't have to critique your own performance, because now you have an automatic out. And I think that all starts with the parents. If there's any way, and aside from the fact that these people are making nothing and they're kids and they're just learning, these games really don't mean anything. Look, if we're talking about college NCAA championships, that's one thing. This is youth hockey that at that level doesn't mean anything. That don't get boisterous when it comes to the referees, penalties, because it bleeds over and the kids hear it, and then they're going to think, well, if you're complaining about it, I can complain about it.
Well, it is funny at the higher levels, right? It gets more civil. Like, the higher you get, the more these athletes and professionals can speak to each other in ways. Again, it gets heated, no doubt about it, but it gets in a way. And I think a lot of my feeling about this is that if you want great leaders, then you have to model good leadership. And I just don't think we have a lot of good models. And I
We
think what
don't.
happens is, we allow, winning coaches to model poor behavior. We allow good hockey players to model poor behavior. We allow parents to lose their minds in the stands and then let them back into the stands again. So I think that modeling goes such a long way in every sport. I see it in every sport that I've involved in. And I think like a person like me who tries to be a leader because I'm leading, like I have to be the leader. Like I have to, like somebody has to make a decision here, guys. And since I'm
Yes.
leading the program, I guess I'll make the decision. And it's never the most popular decision because it's easy to be a mom and dad, sucking down a couple of beers under a tent, in the summer and have a comment, right? But somebody has to say, hey, listen, this isn't great. Like we probably shouldn't be drinking in front of the kids. And why don't you take this somewhere else and go do this? Or, hey, we probably shouldn't use that language with this group. You could do that if you were in your own car and you want to do this with your own kid.
Yeah.
That's different. But I think this issue of, and we've seen it now in sports, like in silent Sundays in soccer and, days where we've asked officials to introduce themselves and literally have to get to a point where they have a card and they have to read the card like, hi, my name is Mike. I'd like to say, let's have a great contest today. I'm not going to take, this is where the threshold is. And I used to joke all the time as a youth coach, like everybody's bitching about the officials. I go, yeah, listen, they're as bad as officials as we are as coaches. We're all bad.
Right.
We're all bad at this, and we're all learning. So
Yeah.
let's all learn together. But I just think I think it really comes down to, and Lee, we talk about it a lot too, right? And even with the people we talk to, it's just the modeling. It's the ability to, if you're going to be, it's hard. It is. And when we talk to our kids, when you talk to your teenager, right, it's hard to be a good person. Like it's hard to be the person that steps up and say, hey, that's not really the right thing we should be doing right now. It's a lot easier just to go along with the crowd.
Mike, I think the key
that's
word,
like the lessons that we need to learn more.
The key word is accountability. And from a societal level, we have lost touch with the meaning of that word, and it gets worse, I think, every year. I don't mean to be dystopian or anything like that, but the lack of accountability. And John, this goes back to what you said. When I'm coaching kids, first off, when I'm coaching anybody, the rule on the bench is you don't even talk to the ref. That's my job as the coach. And I always say, if you want to beat the refs, score more goals. That's something we can control. You know what I mean? But you have to be accountable to the point of, you don't want to be in a position that a referee can control the game accidentally or not. Right.
Yeah.
So I try and teach accountability. I really try and teach the definition of that word. I think there are levels to accountability. I think that's something people miss. It's not so much you're accountable or you're not. A lot of this comes down to the language. Do you say after you got scored, you screwed up? Do you say we screwed up? Are you looking for a solution together? Right. There's levels to this that as a coach, I feel like it's my duty to teach that. Right. If you have an accountable team, and I'm not just talking hockey. I mean, John, broadcasting, my God, if you have an accountable team, you're going to have a good outcome, right?
Sure.
Mostly every time. If you have people pointing fingers, it's going to become a nightmare. I don't care how talented you are.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we need to get back to more of a culture of accountability.
Yeah. And I think what's really important, the thing that I've really tried to focus on with a kid who's playing at this level is to be as objective about my kid as I possibly can. And to know his strengths and to know his weaknesses and to sit there because at some point you're going to feel that your kid's been slighted. It could be because of ice time. It could be because he didn't make a certain team. This is the year for the 2011s that they're playing in the Pee Wee Quebec tournament. So players are going to be chosen over other players for whatever reasons, or there's politics that go into it. And when my son got cut, I actually made a list of all the players, and I had him probably in that bottom third. So I knew that, and I was looking at it very objectively, knowing the other kids, knowing their abilities, knowing that they had been with this program longer, knowing that, that is very possible that he was on that fence, and that something like this could happen. And I wanted him to just think that, look, there's no guarantees here. You still got to go out. You still have to do this. So I think it's very, and what happens is that when things don't go your way, being the player and the parent, it's very easy to say, well, you're better than that kid. That's
Mm-hmm.
BS, or that didn't happen. I think it's really important to try to put it into perspective as much as you can, and to try to be objective about what your kid's doing. Because look, you don't have to have the best shot. You don't. But if he's not exuding effort, he's not giving the most effort. That's the one thing that you can't control. They can control your effort, how hard you play, how good of a teammate you are, those things. And so I always look at that and say, were you as good in those areas? Because if you weren't, you're given coaches, or you're giving people a reason to not select you.
Right.
So, because you see it, parents will always say that, where do you think your kid stacks up? And, they'll have them up here when they're probably down here. And
Mike loves that one, but
it's not, and they need a reality check, and sometimes, and that's one thing that I try to take out.
It's a gift, John. It's a painful gift, but it's a gift. Look, we talked before about the ROI. The ROI is these life lessons. All right, yeah. John, there's no way you got to where you got in broadcasting by constantly going, well, I should have had that anchoring job. I should have been that guy. That might have motivated. You might have thought that, but you didn't. It wasn't a crutch, right? Again, I'm speaking out of turn for you here. My point is, in real life, we all know this, right? The person who just points fingers isn't going to go too far, right? The person that can say, you know what, that guy worked harder than me, and he's better than me, and now I can control what I'm going to put in, the time I'm going to put in to get better at these skill sets or at this, because I want to be there. We're not seeing that.
Yeah, but it's right. But even to that point, let's say that kid that did make it doesn't work harder, and you do, but he may be more talented right now.
Sure.
You'll eventually pass it. You continue to do the right things. You continue to preach to your child that you have to outwork them. You will pass the talented kids. That I'm just telling you, those little things that what I was talking about early that don't get talked about amongst the parents and the bleachers, because you don't have that great shot where you can pick a corner. Doesn't matter if you continue to be the hardest working player, who plays the right way, who plays selfless, looks to make that extra pass. I'm still 12-year-olds. They've been playing this game now for 5-6 years. 95% of them don't make that extra pass that they could make. You have the type of kid that can do that. They will eventually rise to the top. I can promise you.
Mama mentality.
And it's really in any of these sports, they're all good. Like these kids, when they get to 18, 19-year-old, there's such a fine line between a kid that makes it and doesn't make it. They're all good. Like you look at kids, I've seen guys in men's league. I'm like, man, where'd you play? He goes, I stopped playing in high school. I go, my God, you're like the best player out here. Like, because it's just little things. It's the motivation. It's the commitment. It's hey, you can't have, I used to joke with our teams. Like I can't have 6 first-line centermen. Like somebody has to play on the position. Well, I'm better than that kid. I know, but that kid was not able to play any other position. They couldn't do anything else. They could only do this. And I have 5 of those kids already. We see it. I run a couple of Quebec team tryouts, I'm involved in the selection process. And I can't tell you how many kids don't make those teams that are better than anybody else, that did. But there's certain kids that need to make it, because you need certain players to play when you go to a tournament, when you go to a game, and just knowing like, hey, this kid, it's the same reason why players get picked on pro teams, right? Like, hey, I know this guy is really good. This kid is a really phenomenal player, but are they going to be able to accept the role that they're not going to get on the ice every shift? Like, can they play the role I need them to play? And sometimes you don't. It's the reason why, players as free agents go certain places and don't. Like, hey, if you're a pitcher, can you resort to being a 2-inning guy? Like, are you going to accept that? Or are you going to be a bitter, frustrated athlete? And parents don't get to see the coach, the GM, the people making these teams. Maybe we have to do all a better job of describing what we're looking for and why the teams are picked. But at the end of the day, a parent needs to say, listen, this is the team they're picking. I think objectively we can say you're better than so-and-so and so-and-so, but there's a reason why they picked them. And, maybe we could find out why, or we could find out where you were, deficient. But a lot of times it's going to be like, and I did college tryouts all the time. Like, listen, I love you. I think you're a great player. You're never going to accept the fact that you're not on the power play. I know it. You're just not going to accept it. And you're not going to be on this power play because I have 7 other guys that are going to be on this power play. And since you're not going to accept that, I can't have you in the locker room bitching and moaning and undermining me, saying that you should be on the power play. So
I'm still waiting for the first 12-year-old to embrace being a penalty killer. I have not found one yet.
I was a great penalty killer. I used to love that.
Yeah,
but the only time I got on the ice, I go, please, somebody take another 10-minute misconduct, please.
No one ever talks like, man, I love playing on the penalty. I've never heard a kid at this level, at the Pee Wee level, say, I really love playing on the penalty kill. But you need those players as much as you need the 5 out there on the power play, probably even more so.
And that's what's great about athletes, right? And in your profession, in broadcasting, right? You listen, everybody can't be in front of the camera. Everybody can't be interviewing. Somebody has to plug the damn thing in and get the satellite, figured out. Like, so there's roles for everyone. And that's, I think, what Lee's point is, right? That sport is supposed to be teaching us all of these great things. And sometimes we lose the fact that that's what sport is in any sport. And it is, it's great when you see it happening, in a positive way, because that's the funnest part about this is like, oh my God, like you really made something of this because you embraced who you were, what your role could be, and being the best at that role. And that's like a great lesson to teach your kids, I think.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. There's so much video out there. I know the kids like watching Connor Bedard and how great he is, Connor McDavid. It's so fun to watch, but my favorite player, and I don't know if there will ever be somebody that will surpass this for me. My favorite player and the NHL player that I like to show my son and other players the way that he played the game was Pavel Datsyuk. Because not only was he flashy, we all love his hands, but he probably could have reeled off 100-point seasons, had 5 or 6, but because he was so dedicated to playing so sound defensively and how well how hard he played for such being a small guy and how he used his stick and created takeaways and stuff. All you got to do is just go onto YouTube and look up Pavel Datsyuk, 100 greatest players, and that video reel of how he would play defense and just pick guys' pockets. It just really was something that is, you just don't see it. You hope that more players at these younger levels will take a pride in playing that way, because that's the way that the game has to be played.
I totally agree, John. And I'm going to say this too, that I was spot on about having less questions today, because we had a fantastic discussion today. And we've kept you on for over an hour, and I think we could do another hour, but
were there any questions in there? I don't know.
There's a lot of discussion, but look, John, first off, I just want to thank you again for giving us some time tonight. For the whole listening audience, again, his podcast is titled Raising a Champion. I highly recommend it. If you like our show, you will love his show. So please give him a follow. And John, I'll give you the last word before I close it out. Again, this has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, it's first off, I'm so glad that you guys have a podcast like this. Our Kids Play Hockey. It's really cool. And I'm seeing more and more of these. And I spend a lot of my time just listening to podcasts. But I guess the thing that I would like to go out on is just don't get caught up at the age of 5 and 6 and 7. It's my hockey. It really doesn't matter. It's about having fun. Here's what I'm going to say. You're not going to create an NHL superstar at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, but you can certainly burn them out of the game. And that's, to me, the bigger takeaway is make sure that you're creating an environment that's instilling passion, like they want even more, instead of sort of robbing them of that energy, because it's a long process. Like if you're a parent and you got a kid that's now 7 and 8, and you're like, I think he's got potential. You're not going to know that. You're really not going to know that until another 7 or 8, 9 years. They start to hit puberty, because the whole thing changes. Enjoy the ride early on. Teach them to be a good teammate. That's when you can start instilling, leadership qualities. because they're actually listening at that point. Once they get to be like 11, 12, 13, they start to tune you out. So when they're young kids, that's when you can start feeding them little nuggets and little things that they can take with them, because they'll remember that. The kids are sponges at that age. And so that's a good age to where don't worry so much about the hockey, but teach them little things to be good teammates, because they're going to be playing, especially at the mite level, they're going to be playing with kids who are falling over their laces, for the most part. Encourage them. I do take pride in the fact that my son tried to get every single kid on his mite team involved in the game, as frustrating as it may have been. But it's mite hockey, man. You can really teach your kid a lot of life lessons in that age group. And it's not about wins, losses. It's not about how many goals they score. It's about none of that. It's just about going out there, having fun, creating an experience for not only you, but for everybody on that team.
Well, John, I'll tell you, our target audience, our main audience is that age group. And I think that's a great note to end on. And I'll say this to everyone listening. If you like what he just said, go check out Raising a Champion. Yeah. You can listen to wherever podcasts are heard. You can also listen to our podcast, Our Kids Play Hockey, wherever podcasts are heard. But for Mike Benelli, John Boruk, I'm Lee Elias. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We will see you next week. Have a great time with your kids. Skate on. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.